My first 2 TikToks broke easily 100k views.
What most people don't have in mind is you can really plan your career. What we try to do is give a feedback loop for everything that you do.
You can also make it to the top if you're not going the total stride way.
What is up, everyone? I'm your host, Chris, and you're listening to Nonlinear, the podcast in which we unpack these strategies, hacks, and decisions high-achieving young professionals use in 2023 plus to design careers they love. In this episode, I speak with Jonas Stegh and Döbele, the founders of PumpkinCareers. And their motto is actually very, very similar to what we are talking about in this podcast. Because what their company is doing is they're helping young professionals who are very early in their career to break through into top tier investment banking firms or top tier consulting companies. Particularly David, you might even know from TikTok, because he's had a time where he went viral with this very, very memeable content on, is my CV still good enough to get into McKinsey? Or which internship should I do next? Or like all of those kind of hilarious videos. And it's super, super cool to have now spoken to them to get a glance behind the curtain. Jonas I already knew before from a conference which we've attended a couple of years ago. It's been a blast to record this episode, particularly because I'm super interested in content, community, and coaching businesses. And so I'm super happy to be able to give you access to this episode. Thank you very much, David and Jonas. And I would say, let's dive right in. Jonas and David, I'm super stoked for this episode, actually. Why don't you very quickly intro you? I will intro you in the intro anyways, but maybe say something to yourself very quickly.
I mean, that's difficult to guess what you already said, but let's try. So usually we have aligned our founding story like fairly closely. So I think it doesn't really matter who of us will tell it. So we both started our studies in 2015, it was, I think. And we met basically in the first week of the opening week, basically. And since then, we've been friends over our studies. And David, he did some really impressive things within his first study year. And did an internship at UBS or UBS, it's English, I think, and some other stuff, really good grades, and started to open up a YouTube channel over his studies. David, how was that, starting a YouTube channel?
It was more or less semi-successful, I think. So the idea was that I would sell some tips on how to write job applications, stuff like that. But I didn't have that niche that we are in right now back then. So I was just helping out like random people, like 40 years old guys who looked for another job, and some pupils who wanted to do like a high school internship. So it was like really random, not with a big focus. And then I might continue for Jonas, because Jonas really took off in the second half of his bachelor's degree. So he completed a couple of internships at Roland Berger, BCG, and Triton Partners in private equity. And he had like similar learnings like me, just on a different level. So for me, it was like, okay, I didn't have any idea in the beginning of my academic career how to write job application, what to expect in a basic job interview, stuff like that, because you don't get it taught in high school. And back then, there wasn't like any good tutorials on YouTube. So I had to figure it out on my own. And I think Jonas had some quite similar learnings, just on a more professional scale. Maybe Jonas, you can talk about your like case prep for BCG, stuff like that. So you also figured out that, okay, what was available back then wasn't like totally perfect, I think.
Yeah, so I think the two of us basically noticed that within a short time span, like half a year, maybe you could give your own feedback back. So if you would just wait for half a year, you could already would have some learnings to give back basically to yourself. I think that's a really short time amount. And we also noticed that like some networks, for example, like at private universities, they do a way better job actually teaching you all that stuff. And so we found that niche for the both of us and started to explore it via some offline workshops. That was like, I think a few months before COVID. That wasn't like, we noticed while doing those workshops that we can basically tell a lot more than the few hours we had with the people there, and started to think about how we can do that better. And also, it's just one day. You can't really, the biggest problems usually come up when you really try to execute something and not when you're teaching the theory on something. And so we noticed that and started to talk about what we can do about that. And in the beginning of 2020, started our company back then with a different name. We did a rebranding half a year later. And since then, we are helping students to go into certain career paths, especially investment banking and strategy consulting, private equity. And from time to time, obviously, we also have people that go into the startup ecosystem, more like to traditional corporates and stuff like that. And we basically help with everything. So our approach is that we try to maximize everything that you can do. Is like, in contrast to like other stuff or a career service with small, we try to give you basic things so that you don't do some really bad stuff. And we try to find more of the upside and really maximize everything that you can in that journey, focusing on the study.
And what are like the biggest levers you see in people, both on the downside, like downside mitigation so that they don't fuck up in an interview, and then also the unleash your potential, which is your slogan, which I really like. And what do you see there?
So I think for me, it's usually what most people don't have in mind is that you can really plan your career and you can really plan it out from step to step. I think in contrast to stuff like an interview, most people know that they should prepare for an interview at least. So they do some stuff, although that can be optimized a lot. But it's for the career planning aspect, most people don't really have a plan at all. And they don't really care to plan. So it's, I heard about that one internship, so I'm going to do it and I'm going to apply. And I was on this event and I heard about this company, so I'm just going to do it. And it's not, hey, I'm trying to get like a basket of applications and look and go through all those interviews and try to get the best possible outcome. It's a lot more random, I think. So for me, especially in the past, that was like the biggest lever, as it's something people don't usually do.
I think one of the key, like one of the most important things when you work with us is that you're like constantly disciplined and motivated to just continue the ride. So like we have a lot of guys who have been working with us for 2.5 years since the beginning of their studies. And they also broke into like tier 1 strategy consulting firms or investment banks like before their master's degree. So that's like the number one perfect goal for most of the people we work with. And a lot of them, they never had one really big step. They just continued like doing small steps toward that goal, like constantly over 3 years. And I think when you're not working with a team that helps you out, and you're not constantly knowing that everything you do is like perfectly aligned with your goals, then it's really easy to just like skip one internship, just relax for one semester and not do so good in university because you're not so sure, okay, do I study correctly? Is this internship right for me or is it not? So like we eliminate all that uncertainty. So you're like naturally a lot more motivated to continue for 2 or 3 years going towards your goal. And I think that's something like, of course, it's not the main reason people join our coaching programs, but I think that's what really is like a big part of our success.
What's the main reason people join? Just to break through into tier 1?
Yeah, it depends. So some, especially nowadays, a lot of people just know that, for example, the network is really impressive. So we work with over 1,000 people. So they know when they join us that they basically do that as well. If 1,000 people or get to know a few hundred really easily within those industries, you're set for your career networking wise. It would be beneficial to have some even more senior, but on similar levels. That's a really big factor. And then we have those people that are just really ambitious. They usually join us with slightly before their study or the beginning of the study, because they just want to maximize everything that they are doing and they want to have the best possible outcome. And then we also have people that maybe weren't as ambitious at the beginning of their studies and maybe they didn't have as good grades before, or yes, in strategy consulting, your Abiturs or Matura, whatever, is also really important. They have more like a disadvantage, and they try to maximize that from their position. So it depends slightly, but usually people notice that they could optimize stuff, and they're joining for doing that.
And other like stories where you had, or where you must regularly have people who are like, actually on paper it's impossible to get them into, let's say, JP Morgan or something, right? So
Yeah.
are there stories where you are like, wow, we did an impossible turnaround?
Yeah, quite a few nowadays. I don't know whether you have that still in mind, but probably you notice that as well. Like, especially in banking and consulting, you don't really have a lot of, for example, I don't know, Fachhochschule is a college, and it's not really comparable, right? But
It's like,
you don't have a lot of people from that kind of university, if you would say it, that would break into those industries. And for example, we had 1 month where we had 3 people joining the same investment bank that had this background. And that, for example, was one. Or we have quite a few people that have Abiturs or high school diplomas with grades. Usually, most people would say that you can't do it. For example, if it's above 2.5, usually on the German grading scale, usually you would say no chance. You will get filtered out basically, and quite a few people that did that. And those are actually like, for us, at least for me, those are like even more nice to see if those things go through, because you have like more of I think our part in actually doing that stuff is probably bigger or easier to spot than if we have somebody who's ambitious either way and who would probably do it without us, but maybe would do it would need 1 or 2 internships more, or would need half a year, 1 year master degree more. And that's usually a little more difficult to spot what's actually our contributions, a little more difficult to isolate, I think.
Makes sense. Hey, so I love this, or I love your model, and I think it's super, super valuable what you're doing. And thus I also, of course, did a couple of days ago, or maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, I did some research, and then I stumbled upon the interview, David, you did with Moritz Baier Lentz. Mm-hmm. And so I love this point you just now mentioned about like that you basically can design a career and that you can plan a career up front. And even it doesn't have to be the most linear thing, right? What you do, what you two do, of course, is like linear career design up until this point. However, like Moritz did a couple of jumps, let's say, who weren't probably, the most planned, like to the White House, for instance, or stuff. Like, what frameworks did you take away from speaking to Moritz, and did he alter your perspective even more, or did it just ingrain what you thought before already?
I think he actually like more or less did exactly what we are talking about, just on a longer journey, because I think he also, like, we talked about it privately a lot. I think we didn't dive into it in the podcast too much, but Moritz is like really big on goal setting. Like, he has this like really sophisticated goal setting technique where he sets goals like 1 year, 3 years, 10 years for each aspect of his life. So there's also for private stuff, every aspect of his life, he has a goal template, and then he revises it like once a year and adjusts it. I'm pretty sure that, for example, Moritz would have also benefited greatly from PumpkinCareers if we would have been available back then. For example, he received a scholarship from his high school, the Studienstiftung des Deutschen Volkes. It's the most prestigious scholarship in Germany. And he declined it because he and his mother, they thought that you would have to pay in order to receive a scholarship. And he didn't know that you get paid when you receive or you get money if you receive a scholarship. So just for that, it would have been like really great for him to be with us. And he like really took off after graduating from his dual study degree. I think beforehand, looking back, he might have took some other steps, but in the long run, everything turned out. And that's also something like when I speak to other super successful people, of course, everyone made mistakes. Like, thinking back, like no one like walks a completely linear career path. But in the end, if you just keep going long enough and you don't lose the perspective of what you're doing, and you're smart and you're bright and you have a little bit of luck as well, then you can also make it to the top if you're not going the total stride way. But I'm pretty convinced that if you take those people and you would have shown them at some point in the career, you could have told them, okay, you can do this step, but I think it would be a little bit better if you would choose this step or this step. I'm pretty sure that 99% of those people would have ended up at least where they are right now. So I'm pretty sure that if Moritz didn't if he would have accepted the scholarship right away, if he would have decided to study at a really target university right away, I'm pretty sure he also might have ended up at Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. And now Lightspeed or something, right?
Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
A couple of more questions to your program itself and Pumpkin and how it runs, and then I would love to switch and go into the business building aspect of everything. So assume I would be applying now for Pumpkin, or I don't know how it works, pay the fee.
Yeah.
And pay the membership fee. Would I have to do an interview, by the way? Because I saw the status quo assessment, but it's probably...
we have a process where we will look into whether working together is beneficial for both sides. Obviously, as we said, we have a focus on certain career paths, and it's not... We could really help you when you are 10 years into working, or when you have very different goals. So we try to do that in kind of a short first call, that's 15 minutes. And then when we notice that it's usually beneficial for both sides, then we will go on into a more in-depth call where we also will show what, at least from our perspective, what are the things that will come next, what are the things that you could work on, and how we could help in doing that. So it's a call where we basically explain everything. And then or maybe sometimes there are also are parents involved or stuff like that. It depends obviously on the family and how they are doing and stuff like that. And then they will decide whether to start with us. And then there's then you start, you have an onboarding process. What we did a few weeks or even a few months ago, we decided to actually do an event, for example, every month where everybody can joined the program in the last two months basically. And so they really get to know each other quite early. And those are basically the first steps in working with us. I
think that's where we also re-met in Berlin, right? When you just randomly texted me. I think we met at Frankfurt School. At some point at an event.
At WHU should be English.
Okay, at Campus for Finance we met. Yeah. And but it's already so long ago. That's why I was a bit surprised when you said that you started out in 2019 or 2020. Yeah. Because I think we got to know each other must have been 2018 latest, or 16, actually during the bed undergrad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I never did anything than an undergrad, so it definitely wasn't.
Say it again?
I only have an undergrad, so...
yeah.
I think it was 2016, probably.
Yeah. Hey, and then also in a private conversation, you mentioned the gamification of your program, which I found super interesting. Do you want to highlight this a bit?
What we are basically trying to do... So we talked before about planning and stuff like that, and some people tend to misunderstand that, because from our perspective, it's about really making rational decisions and have all the information. And if you decide for your own that, for example, that an internship would be better for your own career, but you decide against it because it's you don't like the people there, or you don't like where you're living while doing that internship, that's fine. But most people don't have the information about how much they would benefit from an internship. So what we try to do is basically give all those informations and have basically a feedback loop for everything that you do. If it's while studying, basically you have a system where you always know how good you are within a semester. Because I think, as David mentioned, the problem most people tend to have is that they that's really difficult while studying and while having a big goal that's like a few years away, that you can't really put it down into smaller goals and smaller steps. And we try to do that with career planning. We try to do that with grading. And also when you have like more prestigious interview processes, you also try to plan that. Was that the gamification aspect you were referring to?
Or type of, I think what you're currently saying, if I understand this correctly, and this is funny because my flatmate is a programmer and streamer, and I interviewed him yesterday about how he became a programmer and streamer. Yeah. And what you're basically saying is you gamify things in life which have too long feedback loops. So you just help students basically understand how they're moving during uni, for instance, during internships, when no one basically assigns you grades for it. Ah, cool, he did an internship at OCNC. That's 5 out of whatever. And this guy did not do an internship, whatever. So I think it's really cool what you're saying. Just one final question, which I'm interested in is, do you sometimes also challenge what people set themselves as, or basically 2 questions. Number 1 is, do you set the goals which people set for themselves? Do you challenge them in terms of not only this is not ambitious enough? I'm sure that you do this all the time. Yeah. Someone wants to go to investment banking tier 2, and then you're like, no, you should go here. But do you also challenge people on the personal aspect now? Hey, to be honest, I don't think you fit into IB. You would be super unhappy. Like you should go here and there or whatever. Yeah. Or you should do something entirely different.
Especially the sentence you said, I did that quite a lot. I think strategy consulting is a little broader also from characters you will see and stuff like that. But I think especially investment banking, it really is really beneficial when you have certain attributes. And if I really notice that people don't have those, and for example, if you're like really more, for example, nice guy or nice girl, if I have to really quote or stereotype something, I think you have a difficult time there. It's not like saying that all investment bankers are not nice and stuff like that, but it's a really rough environment, and you have tough hours. Most people don't tend to take the time to explain. It can be loud and stuff like that. So if you're more on the sensitive side on those things, and I noticed that when I gave people feedback, for example, we also get to know the people fairly personally. Not all of them, but especially when they use our program a lot, we interact with them a lot. So we talk with them a lot, and then we also get to know them, and we notice how they receive feedback and how they would react when we are saying certain stuff. And if I notice that, I mentioned to quite a few people already, for example, that I don't think that they should do they wanted to do an investment banking, and I won't say don't do it, but I will say from my perspective how I got to know you, I think it wouldn't be something that fits you. In the end, it's their decision, but I would definitely tell them. And we also said to people that they are too ambitious and maybe they should like relax a little. In the end, I think what most, especially older people, tend to do is, you should relax more in your studies and it's the best time of your life and stuff like that. But they are basically just telling that to themselves in the moment, and they think about their life that they should have relaxed more. It's not like just in that part of their life, they're just telling that for all of their life, for the life story. And I think it's not really beneficial when you have a really ambitious person in front of you that you tell them, studies is the best time of your life. You should just do some more holidays and travel and stuff like that, because they are ambitious. They want to do something and they want to achieve something within their career. And I think it's more beneficial when you say to them, you bring into perspective and tell them it's not like this internship won't decide on whether you will have a career or not. But it's not beneficial to tell them just chill a little, because they won't hear to it.
Yeah, I totally get this. I also think that your gamification system can actually make uni also more fun. Because like it can be sometimes that you're just like, everyone has, I for instance have bigger brothers, one who's also in the business world, who of course helped me like get my mindset clear around certain things and stuff. But for many people, I think this is just missing. They don't have it. So I think it's super, super valuable to have guidance, gamification. I think it's really nice. Hey, last question regarding this part, and then let's finally move into the business building part. It's how do you shift the mindset of people when they're, for instance, like thinking too small or thinking a bit too hectic? Does this go into you recommending routines like, hey, you should do cold showers, you should do sports 5 times a week, you should do whatever? Like, how do you make this entire shift from like planning your career top down to then also executing?
Yeah, I think I will just go into something and then you can talk a little about the routine stuff and stuff like that. And I think it depends on, I think what's most important for most human beings, if they find out on why they are not able to follow something or why they are scared or stuff like that. And it's not needed all of the time. I think sometimes you can just use like willpower and then discipline will come in and you will just follow basically morning routines and stuff like that. But I think for the biggest issues, usually there's like kind of a story which tells on why you have developed in the person you're being now and why you are scared about certain things. For example, on a psychological level, it could be that you're always late because that's the only moment in which you can take control. Because when you're always late, that's the only point in your life maybe where you are in full control because you are like a few minutes late. That's, for example, it's not like that's the explanation for everything and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to get to know yourself and get to know on why you're doing the stuff you're doing, and then to work on this as well, on not just on a will level and to just push through, but also on an emotional and get to know yourself level. And we try to do that with people. It's that most of them are fairly young, so it's not all of them want to go into that stuff already, because I think sometimes life has to teach you some lessons that you try to explore those things. But we do that as well if people want to do that. But for most people, it's usually most beneficial to establish some routines, to work on their diet and stuff like that.
And how do you go about figuring out or like building up hypotheses why a person is, for instance, coming late?
Usually it's like the same as sales. I know you also did sales. You have to ask the right questions, and then usually something will build up. You'll just ask the question on why do you think you're coming late, and then usually people will use certain words and stuff like that, and then you have similar to sales when you're trying to find the true objection. You will notice over time what are the patterns and what are the things you would go into more depth on.
Yeah, I think like for most of the students who come to us, they already bring with them a really high level of commitment and motivation, because otherwise they wouldn't like work with us, because it's if you're not motivated, we're the wrong place and you won't get accepted for programs. What I mostly advise them on is to set up certain routines that would be like probably beneficial for them, and then set up like clear ways to keep on going. For example, for our clients, it's really beneficial that they have like clear mentors in our program that they can rely on, that they can talk with, for example, once a week. And so it's, if I tell one of our students, okay, so for this next week, I want you to do this and this every evening. I want you to write down how you felt after doing this and this, stuff like that. And then next Thursday, you come into our call and we talk about it again. So he knows, okay, I'm not just disappointing myself if I'm not disciplined enough to do, but I'm also just disappointing David or another coach. And also they like, of course, you feel stupid if you like buy into our programs and then you don't like do the stuff you're told to do. So you're wasting your money, obviously. So I think that's, for me, I don't often see people don't get their like asses up and work. I rather see the contrary, that something that also Jonas said a couple of minutes ago, that sometimes I rather have to slow people down a little bit, because they like want to do everything at once. Like they want to do an internship, they want to join like 4 different student initiatives, they want to join a student consultancy, then they want to write like perfect grades, and they want to go to the gym 1.5 hours every day, then they want to do that and that. They are politically involved, and then they also think about a new startup idea, and then I rather have to slow them down instead of tell them to work harder. So but it's also because we're like in a really like bubble in our coaching program, I think.
Yeah, hey, super cool explanations. I would say let's now move on to how you actually build the business. So to gain there some pace. So Jonas, you mentioned earlier you were type of like testing in 2019 in a couple of group settings, the collab with the people, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And then you saw, it works out in one day, but we could tell so much more. This is what you told me in another convo. And then you basically just started. Did you then already start selling and then making the community program legit? Or what was the step?
Yeah, we were fairly certain that we will sell the program. So we already built it for 2 or 3 months before that, and then started into selling it. I think if you don't have like that traction before it, you can also start selling and do more one-on-one in the beginning, but we didn't do that. And yeah, then what we also talked about in the last conversation, what we are usually doing is, so system works like we have videos, then we have personal interactions. And when we noticed certain things coming up a lot in personal interactions, either when you talk directly to us or via text, then we will tend to look into on how we can put that into a video or a document. And so over time, basically more and more videos will come, because usually it's the best when I really take my time and explain it rather than doing a one-on-one with you. Because if I tell you the same thing I told the 3 people before you, I think the explanation won't get any better.
Yeah.
Probably. And so what we really believe in is that you take the time, really produce high quality video or use a document and give that to the people. And so over time, for at least from my perspective, I think that through those videos that we optimize, for example, if you take presenting yourself within an interview, in the beginning we had 3 videos on that, and then and now it's 50 or something along those ways. And I think now probably I'm one of the few people in history that actually will see only like top 10% answers to that questions. So I can now think about how we can optimize those even further. And most people, if you start all over again, all the time when you're doing one-on-ones, you have to always get somebody from like top 20, 30, 50% to like top 10. But now I can actually work with top 10% results through the videos and through a like process, and think about how we can do that even better. So I think from the fulfillment side, that's how we build up the business.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's pure product explanation. Okay, guys. So just to summarize very quickly, you test it, you start monetizing quite quickly, and you understand how to leverage the product, so how to improve the product a bit more. And then at some point, you must kick in the acquisition strategy, right? Because up until this point, I feel like you've tested a bit via videos and this and that. Am I rightly assuming that then David's TikTok virality with the memes kicks in?
Yeah, I think from the storyline, I started my YouTube channel in 2017. We started our coaching programs in 2020. And I think I started with TikTok in 2021, like in the middle of 2021. So 1.5 years later, it was one of my social media employees. He told me, okay, David, you need to get on TikTok. It's the new shit. And I just thought, okay, like doing dance videos, stuff like that, it's not for me. But then he said, no, we need to try it out. And so I did a couple of TikTok clips. And back then, I don't know if it's today still like that. Back then, I think it was like the algorithm of TikTok, when you were new to the platform, it gave you like a really big push. And I think my first 2 TikToks on that platform both broke easily 100K views with just like really basic tips. What are the most interesting jobs after like business administration, what you can earn in investment banking, stuff like that. So it was like the beginning. And then also in 2020, when we started with PumpkinCareers and we slowly grew a little bit, like 2 or 3 meme pages in the business administration area started growing. It was like BWL memes and Hedge von Henning. They were like the first 2 pages, I think. And they already like used pictures of me a couple of times. So it was like, there was like this kind of funny meme stuff, and then it was me, like, and both the meme sites were growing and my social media presence was growing. And then naturally, because some of the meme sites, they grew rather quickly than me, I tried to like get traction with their growth as well. So for example, like I think it was in 2021, I think it was in 2021, there was like a battle of the meme pages. There was like a tournament, who makes the best memes, and there were like 10 different business meme pages from Germany, and I was like a commentator and commenting on each battle and stuff like that. So it was like really weird time back then. But yeah, and then I slowly started to also do some jokes on social media, like not really like sketches or stuff like that, but just answer some questions, for example, a little bit more like ironically. For example, why does every business administration student have a Ralph Lauren shirt? And then I like just gave like a random answer to that question. But it wasn't like just completely out of the air, because a little bit of truth was in each question and each answer. Because if you go onto campus of one of those like typical business schools, you see a lot of Ralph Lauren. So it's like half joke, half reality. And then like this, with those clips, or at least with some of them, I like gained great virality for 1 year straight. Like every clip I said something about Ralph Lauren, stuff like that. It almost 100% certainty reached at least like 100, 200,000 views. And we always thought to ourselves, okay, of course it's not like totally irrelevant, but it's still the target group thinks it's cool, it's funny. And if a couple of them like they then continue watching my YouTube channel, and if just 1% of them like maybe someday visits our website and realizes, oh, it's not just Ralph Lauren jokes, it's also like serious career consultancy stuff, they might like just opt in on our website, and it was totally worth it. So we rode with that like for 1.5 years. But then at some point, like all in our team, and especially me, like we all felt like, okay, maybe it was we drove it a little bit too far. So it was like when I walked in the streets, for example, like I was recognized a lot of times, but most of the times it was like people just saying, hey, I know you from TikTok, you're that Ralph Lauren guy. Oh, it's so funny. Can I take a picture with you? But it was not like, hey, man, I study at Frankfurt School. I want to get an internship. Very nice. Can I write you on LinkedIn? That was what I was hoping for. That wasn't what I was getting. And also, for example, some older people, of course, like, for example, some senior investment bankers. Some of them, they really they understood the type of humor and they found it hilarious. And I received a lot of messages. For example, also Moritz, he said, hey, David, the first LinkedIn message I received from Moritz was, hey, David, I worked at Goldman, McKinsey, White House. I have a Stanford MBA. Can I still break into IB? So that was like the meme question. And that was he wrote. So I received a lot of like really good connections by that, but also some senior guys that said, oh, it's so stupid. How can you do that? It's so stereotyped, stuff like that. And they didn't get the humor, or like they get the humor, but they didn't find it funny. Then 7 or 8 months ago, like in April this year, I think we made the decision to like just cut everything completely out ongoing. There are still a couple of clips that are still out there, of course. But like for the last 6 months, there's like almost no like humorous stuff from me in the open. And it really, now when I get approached, it's like really, hey, David, I'm in Frankfurt School. I want to do an M&A internship. Keep up with your work or da-da. So it like the virality really dropped down. But on the other side, like I had the opportunity to speak into like really big German podcasts to get some really nice press coverage. I still have a lot of followers on TikTok and now some, of course, not each of my TikToks gets 100,000 views, but I still manage to like get like a serious, coverage with completely serious content.
Yeah. Hey, congrats, by the way, to the book. I just saw it. I haven't ordered it yet. But we'll come to this at the end. Hey, maybe like the final 10 minutes or something. One part which I'm particularly interested in now, really keen on speaking with you about, is like you building a community business, a coaching/community business in Germany, which is, I'm currently also writing some newsletter stuff or prototyping this basically. And of course, like I had to use the Comedy-Gruppe and Lamborghini Brudi stuff in my newsletter to basically re-educate people on, hey, coaching is not always, there's this bro who wants to, who basically scams you off and stuff. And it's actually like the reason why I also switched from Google to Yodel back then, because I'm fascinated by community companies. So how did you in 2020 come up with, okay, let's build a coaching/community business? Is there anyone who mentored you or any resource you found or anything, how you convinced yourself, okay, let's calm down, it's maybe not that scammy? Because this stuff was hyping back then, like Lamborghini Brudi, Jan Böhmermann, like all of this stuff.
Yeah, for us, it's not. I think a lot of people in this space, they start to make money. And obviously we also wanted to make money. But for us, like the main motive or the main starting point that we noticed that we could help ourselves a few weeks or months or years ago. And so I think the starting point was a little different. Like we didn't search for anything and stuff like that. We did it before without earning a lot of money. I also did a YouTube channel like 1 year before we actually founded the company. And of course, we wanted to earn some money, but it wasn't like the only thing we walked into. And then I think it depends on how you look at the market. I think you can always learn something, especially some of the things that are actually working. But then there are a lot of scammy things, and we notice that as well in our stuff. And still to this day, when potential customers or prospects come into our funnel and then they have to talk to their parents or stuff like that, parents will say, it's online, it's a little scammy. And I think what we really try to do is put a lot of kind of stuff out that you're really fast in noticing that's not the case. Obviously, we have a different background than most of those people. We have studied, we have degrees, and we also did internships in those roles. We have coaches that work in those companies. We have a lot of interviews, like David told before, with experienced people, and we have basically we published like one testimonial every week for a really long time. And we also have ambassadors who you can talk to every week. Another member will take over our Instagram channel and stuff like that. So we try to work with a lot of proof that stuff is actually working. Apart from that, we definitely looked a lot into the market, and we're still doing. It depends on the niche. To be honest, for example, we noticed like a few months ago, Imad Gatsi got really a lot of traffic on YouTube, for example, and we tried to figure it out on how he's doing thumbnails and how he's using titles and stuff like that. And we try to learn from that. Obviously, we're not the only company that does the stuff I told you before with like videos and stuff like that. So we try to learn a lot from everything that we are seeing and not try to just say like everything that's online it's like scammy. But I think you can learn from a lot of stuff if you look into that. And I think, for example, some of the marketing moves of the people you're referring to really help them. I think for us, we noticed over time that it's a really small niche, and we have to make sure that we can't really allow public sentiment to happen where a lot of people are saying that's You don't need that's scammy and stuff like that. So for us, it's always like really important to get a little less controversial over time. But I think if you have a bigger market, probably that's also like you can be really controversial. It can benefit you. And yeah, we always try to learn in different aspects. We talked about, for example, leadership in our other call. That's also something we try to learn.
Like one thing about this, just to go in there quickly, that we can separate these parts. Did you have any starting help? Like when you were sitting together there in 2019, you were like, okay, we have this idea for PumpkinCareers. We have people in a starting state, desired state. We get them there. We do the workshops. Like in the professionalization, did you follow a type of playbook?
Yeah, we also got a lot of feedback along the way. I usually from the beginning I ask a lot of people that I got to know over time what they are thinking about, and then yeah, we also use like some playbooks. It's like for this kind of coaching space, you have like also brands and stuff like that, and you also have like in Germany some people, and we always look into that stuff as well. Yeah,
cool. That's super interesting.
But I think we were not like we're just gonna follow this one approach.
No, you're like from your experience and also how I know you. This is of course like the cool combination, right? So that you have your own mind. Yeah. You do your own experience. You're both quite very clear characters, and then you still understand the resources. And this is what I find so fascinating. That's why I'm asking, because like you were acting against like counter common view. Like I don't like the word counterintuitive because I don't know whether everything is actually intuitive / non-intuitive, but against the common view, contrarian. You acted contrarian, and it seems to play out. Guys, so then a couple of other points before we slowly go into the ending. You've studied at Goethe Uni, I think. Mm-hmm. Jonas, you've been at BCG, Triton, which is, I think Triton is already quite a good private equity, or good, of course, they're probably world-class private equity fund. I don't really know the world that well. And David, you've been at UBS. So how was it for you guys to switch worlds and go away from this, okay, let us not pursue what we're actually selling? You must have felt like you're selling, it's like a bit of...
Yes, it's still getting weird from time to time, and David can also step in on that. But for us, it was like really, I wouldn't say it's like whether difficult, but it tend to make things different from time to time. So for us, we have a team, for example, so we can't like go into the bubble that deep, because know those guys as well. A lot of them, they have like certain language and stuff like that, and you also have like certain perspectives a lot on how the world is going and stuff like that. And for us, we can't really do that because we still have a team, and we're not like VC funded and stuff like that. So we don't have the consulting McKinsey types that will come in and join our company, or people that they tend to be similar. But that did apprenticeship, I think is the English word and stuff like that. They never were in that bubble at all. And so we still have to relate, obviously. And we still have to get to know them and be able to talk about like other stuff rather than just work and our newest startup idea. And I think at least for me, I noticed that character-wise, it's really, I like that a lot. Because like you have to be more open, and you have to have different perspectives and stuff like that. And yeah, we didn't go into that space, but I think for us, it's not like we founded a company because we had to, or it was like really something we want to do, but rather we noticed a problem and started solving that. So for us, it's not like we would have funded something different, or we would have started something different. Rather we would have go into those industries. And as for a lot of people, still would say the second best option would have been private equity for me, because I really enjoyed that. But I got a different opportunity and started to do that. And I think it's really difficult to compare the two.
For me, like I don't. For me, it wasn't that big of a different step, to be honest, because at university, we were like, I was constantly like thinking about, okay, how can I optimize my output? What do I have to do? And now it's like more or less the same thing. And of course, like the type of work is totally different than, for example, if I would have joined like a investment banking firm. So obviously it's like you have far more like responsibilities in all kinds of areas, especially in the beginning. Whereas if you would have joined like a huge corporation, you have this area where you build a really great expertise, but you don't have to care about all the other parts of the investment bank, for example. And so the type of work is different, but the mindset towards this type of work, for me, it's like rather similar. And I also go with Jonas. It was never like, okay, I don't want to go into strategy consulting or investment banking. I have to do a startup because I hate investment banking, strategy consulting so much. It's definitely not the case. Like for us, we had this really great opportunity after our undergraduate degree, but otherwise, I think we would have both had not that big of a problem to join some of those firms that we are bringing out our mentees in. And then maybe some other day we would have founded a company, maybe not, who knows. But also a lot of our clients, they don't want to work like in investment banking for 40 years. They want to or they want to have those opportunities that you get with working there. And then some of them also have founded their own company during their time with Pumpkin. Some of them will like after their master's degree, some of them will after 2 years in consulting or banking, some of them maybe in 10 years, some of them will never start a startup, and everything is fine. And I don't feel like a better human because I have founded a startup. I don't feel less of a human. Just like for me, it's just okay what we did, and it's working, so it's fine. And everyone has to find their own way, I think.
How do you guys educate yourself right now? So how do you make sure you operate at the best level, Jonas? Now, what you basically hinted towards already a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, so what was really beneficial for me, as one noticed, we were still fairly young. We have 15 employees, and we also had like, when we first, it was really fast going from 10 to 20, and I think, or from 5 to 20 employees, and we have had 20 once upon a time, but we noticed that's something we can't really break through that currently, because we weren't able to really manage and be the leader that the company would have needed. So for me, a lot of growth actually happened in leadership coaching over the last around a year. And I really got to know myself a lot better and really grew into somebody I think that's way more capable in leading a company and doing the talk with the employees that are needed and stuff like that. And that helped me a lot. And on this part, and then apart from that, we always try to look into social media, for example. That's really important for us to see what's going on. And then some obviously also reading or podcasts, we talked about that before, helps. But for me, especially the coaching part. So I think it's also like really beneficial to get coached and coach, because you can actually you're even more noticing how important that is and how much it can help you. And so even standing more behind the concept on what we talked about, like the scammy part and stuff like that, you can't, if you experience it on your own, how much it can help you. I think it's also really, it's important.
Yeah, I really appreciate like direct feedback, and like I have a couple of experts in different fields that I can consult with if I experience any problems. And that's more like, of course, I sometimes listen to podcasts, sometimes I read books, but sometimes you get like an idea there for something you might do. But for me, the direct feedback from mentors or experts is far more valuable than just generic input.
Or let's also keep the last question as rapid fire now. The relationship between the two of you, like what's super cool. I've interviewed a couple of founder teams now in the past couple of weeks, mostly tech. You're non-tech, and still what I see about you is like you're ultra complementary, right? So in our last conversation, Jonas and I typed him the architect, and David, you're like the campaigner or whatever, like ENTP, ENFP type of MBTI type. How do you guys think about this, and how do you consciously design the business about this?
Yeah, I think we both had a really good understanding about that from the beginning, and I think we know really ourselves, but as well the other part. And for us, it's like really important. for example, one thing is talking a lot, but then what's also what never happened with us is that kind of we are talking the other part down and stuff like that. So for me, for example, some people who I talk about will say here, David, he does a lot of social media, and I will never just let slip through, because that's like really hard work, and you have to do a lot of stuff to do that, and I will never do that. So I think those are the two most important things, that we never grew like arrogant about the other part in it and try to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we evolved like quite naturally into our current roles. There was like sometimes we talked about it, but it was like more naturally, because I think we both know that we wouldn't be there without the other. So I think it's a good, like, we didn't plan it that way, because I don't know, at least for me, when we started with our offline workshops back in 2019, I wasn't thinking, okay, Jonas is really complementary to me. I think he would be a good co-founder, but it was like, just how it worked.
Yeah, nice. Hey, and if either of you or both of you could go back in time until you were 18, what would you do after school? Would you do the same journey, or would you do something different?
I think most people tend to, at least when we talk with people, most people tend to not be able to say it's okay to be happy where you are now and still doing something different. I think most people tend to find that really difficult to argue. But for me, I would obviously do some things different. I think with the stuff I know now, I think the less risky time to found a company was after our bachelor degree, because we could have done a master anytime. But I think if I would have think about more stuff like that back then, I think I would have done that. I didn't. I did study economics or business, but from what I know now, I would have definitely studied something way more technical, because I didn't know on how to navigate that and what you could do with that. Yeah, I think those are, for example, a few things I would have done differently. But I think apart from that, I like what I've done the last year and how I have developed. So I'm really happy with that.
Nice. And David?
Yeah, for me, of course, I would have maybe went to a different university that would be like even more prestigious than Goethe University, for example. Stuff like that. I would have continued with my internships and didn't stop after my UBS internship, I think, because I wasted 2 years building up the YouTube channel, and that would have been able to make much smoother. But in the end, it's fine how it is.
Okay, all good. Like, the question was rather like whether you would have become a Formula One driver all of this type of stuff. Hey, guys, last question. We already had this joke. I still have to do it. Can I still break into IB, into McKinsey, or?
It's definitely possible for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. I needed this. Guys, thank you very much for this session, and been a pleasure to speak with you. Super cool guys, and whoever wants to fast track, reach out to Pumpkin.
Thank you, Christian.
Thanks for listening to Nonlinear. If you like the content, subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. That's @IamKrishi3, 3 as the number, and Krishi with SCHI. Reach out on any of the platforms if you have comments, questions, or just want to chat.